And we are live. Welcome to another Rare Leader Conversation happening every Tuesday, 12:01 to 12:31. I am Tony Jalen, joined by my wonderful better half, Danielle Jalen. Hello, Danielle.
Good afternoon.
And today's conversation, we're going to talk about a topic that is going to probably make everyone think a little bit. And that is, who are you? What is your identity? When we started Rare Leaders here back last year, one of the principles of Rare Leaders, the Rare Conversations, is to leave the title at the door. And there was a reason for that because we were having people from all over the world join us for these live Rare Conversations. And we're going to dig into that conversation a little bit today of your identity and why does it matter, and some questions for you to reflect on in determining, okay, how is your identity affecting your results? So for those of you who are joining us live, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, aka Twitter Live, as well as YouTube. Feel free to go ahead and put comments in the comment section, and also make sure to make a request to join our Rare Leader community on Facebook. So, Danielle, we were talking about this conversation earlier about your identity, and there was a question that you said about the name tag. Can you go ahead and share that with everyone?
I was sitting in a talk today, and one of the questions that we were asked was, if I was to give you a name tag, what would you put on it? My name is blank. And we talked today about the identity of like, who are you? Like, what is your identity? What do you stand on? Who do you stand on? And it just really made me think, because we really talked about this. I think last year was so pertinent as we were looking at being rare leaders, like resourceful, adaptable, resilient, and engaging. And I think that as a rare leader, that is something we can stand on as our identity, because no matter where we are, we can use that to influence those that are around us. And we're not tied specifically to mom or to wife, because one of the things that got brought up was, if your identity is tied to being a mom, and your kids are going to grow up and leave the house, and it was kind of interesting. I'd never heard this before. Your daughter is your daughter forever, but your son is your son until he gets a wife. And I was like, that's kind of like a true story, and that was one of the things that really resonates with me, is that I want to be an example for him of who he can look to as what a wife looks like, what a mom looks like, and who he may want to marry someday, and what he sees as acceptable behavior in a relationship. And so that was just something that like really resonated with me, as well as it getting brought up. Like, if you have your identity tied to your job and you lose your job, who are you? And so I really think this part of being a rare leader is so key in any area of our life, because no matter what happens, we can still be that rare leader.
Right. You hear about often when people are getting closer to that retirement age, or may have retired from a job they've been at for 20, 30 years. The question that comes up is, who am I now? Because they attached who they were to that outcome, so much, and we're not our outcomes. And I think there's a lot of things that play into figuring our identity. It's like that teacher who was all excited to be that teacher. And they're like, I'm going to change lives. I'm going to make an impact. And all of a sudden, 5 years later, they're like, I'm nothing but a glorified babysitter. Well, really, it's like there's still kids who want to learn. There's still teachers who want to make an impact. It wasn't so much that the kids changed, it was who we thought we were or are changed. And that ties a lot to the outcomes and the results we get in our lives. Of having that filter, okay, but who do I really am? Like, for example, when it comes to me, I write down each day in my part of my plan. Like, today, I'm an outstanding husband and father. I'm an encourager. I'm a life giver. So I think we sometimes got to take a moment to step back and slow down and ask ourselves the question of, who are we without a title each and every day. So if you look at questions of, pondering your personal identity, for those guys who are watching, have you ever really spent time thinking about who you really are? Or maybe you've wondered how other people perceive you. How much do you think a person's personal family history has to deal with their identity?
Oh, I think a lot. I think how we grew up. I think if we all look back at ourselves individually and we're like, oh, I'm going to be a different mom than my mom was, or I'm going to emulate this of what I was shown at from my mom, or these are the things that I admired about my dad. I'm going to continue to do them. These are the things that I didn't like growing up. I'm going to make sure I don't do that. And I think we're all influenced by that in some sort of way. And I think we all have to take that step back and look at, like, am I confident and comfortable with the person that I am, and who am I? What characteristics and values do I stand for that are important to me, and not so much of what's important to those that are around me. They may not be the same. And so are we molding into who others want us to be, or are we molding ourselves into who we truly look at ourselves inside to be?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to your history doesn't have to be the end of your story when it comes to your present identity. I mean, you hear sayings like this, you can't take, the girl out of the city, but you can't take the city out of the girl, right? Or you can take the girl out of the city, but you can't take the city out of the girl. And the encouraging thing about life is that, like you said, you can take steps to being the person that you want to be at any given time. There are times when I've said to myself, I am not a good husband. I am not a good father. I am not a good leader. And I think we got to be careful when we start going down that path, because then it becomes part of our beliefs and it becomes part of the results. What about, you mentioned briefly about the group of the people you hang out with. They say, I'll tell you who you are going to be in 5 years by the books you read and the people you hang around. How much does that have an impact on your identity?
I think it's a big key in what develops you, because the more you're around and immersed in stuff, the more it seeps into you subconsciously that you're not realizing it. The more that you start unconsciously acting or behaving in a certain way. So I think it's really important. Are you at a place where you're unhappy? Then I would first look at, who am I surrounded by? And am I in a place where I'm really happy and I'm enjoying and thriving? Is also a place to look at, like, who am I surrounded by? Like, it's important with who's around you and who's sewing into you and what you're hearing and seeing and doing, that feed into who you are as a person.
Yeah. And I think we got to be mindful of that. At the same time, we're not, passing blame it, take a responsibility. Like, okay, yeah, I've got this group of people that I'm with, like mom always said, be careful who you hang around with. I think there's a lot of truth to that. If you're hanging around people who are constantly complaining about their job, guess what? More than likely, eventually you're going to start complaining about your job. You got your spouse or whatnot, or sport you play. You start complaining about, hanging around people that are complaining about them. More than likely, you're going to start doing the same thing. And so you got to sometimes take a step back and again be aware, and talks about making that choice of, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and if it's a prevailing thought that constantly comes up, why? What about, how does your physical appearance play into your identity?
I think sometimes we can get really wrapped into what we look like, and either want to allow it to stop us from being who we want to be or from doing things. But I think also at the same time, it can flip side, like if you're so into it that you're becoming vain and arrogant and egotistical in some sort of a sense, that it's driving and creating like a negative behavior in you. But I think for the most part, like if we look good, we feel good. And so, I mean, even for myself, like, um, people are like, why do you put makeup on and go to a volleyball game? We're just sitting here all day. Well, it just makes me feel better. Like if I'm looking like I just rolled out of bed and my hair's every different direction and makeup smeared on my face, like I'm not going to act very friendly and be that way. Like it just helps you feel better. Like taking care of yourself means you care about yourself.
Hmm. Well, I mean, although like your appearance isn't the only thing that's relevant about who you are, the fact is that your physical appearance state does provide others with a picture of who you are. Whether we like to say it or not, I mean, it is just the truth. It is just the truth. Like when I'm out and about with my shirt and tie, I get called sir a lot more often versus when I'm wearing my sweatshirt. There's a reason why a lot of medical practices now are going back to doctors in their white lab coats. Because there's an identity attached to that white lab coat. You know, what about your feelings and thoughts and beliefs about yourself?
I think a lot of the times and what we're speaking to ourselves uh, decides that confidence that or lack of self-confidence that we have within ourselves. So if I'm constantly thinking that I'm just terrible at everything, oh my gosh, like I just suck at cleaning the house, I'm just terrible at staying on top of laundry, it just starts to like wear on you, that you wear down your self-worth and you just completely lose all that self-confidence that you had, where hey, today I was busy and I had this going on, but I'm still like doing something, and taking credit and celebrating that. Like it is what it is. Like everyone has different things that are going on, but I think
Right.
a lot of how we talk to ourselves starts to sew into how our attitude is about ourselves.
Well, it goes back to the saying of, what you believe to be true about yourself becomes true about yourself. Because what happens is you start showing up in that manner, I believe. I'm so overweight, I'm so this. Well, I think what happens then is that, for example, you say you're bad with money or you're bad with remembering people's names. If you say it often enough, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you're not bad at names. You're just choosing not to know names. You're not unhealthy. You're not that, you are choosing unhealthy habits. And I think it's so important to really like remind ourselves that, our self-talk does make a difference. And if you're not getting the results you want, ask yourself, okay, if I was to get XYZ result, who would I have to show up as? If I was to go ahead and be, have millions of dollars in the bank, who would I have to show up as? I would like to say a financial wizard. If I was to be that person that people love to hang out around with, negative Nelly's not going to work. But I like to say I'm the phantom of fun. And that's where we start designing our identity, because it's all revolves around asking ourselves the right questions. So maybe Like, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how how important it is to make sure in understanding who you are and why you are who you are, ha- asking yourself the right questions.
I think it starts to lead you to really looking at the values and characteristics that matter to you. Like what is important to you? Is it important to you or is it important to those around you? And I think that it starts to take you on a more self-awareness, introspective journey to really define who you are, who you want to be. And it gives you the track to work on that.
hmm I think that's where journaling comes into play. You know, they say the best self-help book you'll ever read is your own personal journal. And I look at some things back from my journal when I was 18 years old, how I'm still living those same identities today, and how I've also evolved. But that's where I say a lot of times is, you know, if you don't document it, it didn't exist. You know, and I think it's when it comes to identity, one, you got to figure out what your values are, like what's important to you. Remove the title of being, you know, and then working for XYZ company, being a business owner, being a spouse. If you removed yourself from all of that, who are you? And that might be a what's the word I'm looking for?
It's a process. It's not an
hmm
easy little quick, unless you've already done it and that's what you're working on. But like, I think that it takes time. It really is not just an overnight process of like developing that. I think it takes several sit down, quiet, like away from everything, focus to really reflect on that and put to paper like all the thoughts, like the things that are important to you and why is that important to you, it, so that you can really hone in on who that is.
Like understand what constitutes your true self. And I think the ultimate goal for all of us is to develop and nurture those choices that are consistent with our true self. Because I think if you deny who you really are, you deny the best within you. And it's not always about being the best, but it's about being the best version of you. And I think it helps you find more happiness in life because you're living in harmony with yourself. So like what are some things you've done to be in more harmony with your own self and embracing your identity?
I think the biggest thing was understanding like different scenarios and situations that like the biggest thing that happened was obviously the shutdown of 2020 and then just everything that came with it. And I think that was that time that we all were able to give in that space to sit down and say like all this was going on and like us as a family we're running in 50 different directions and trying to do so much that we lost focus on who we are as a family and what's important to us. And so it gave us that opportunity to like really zero in and be like, okay, you know, like what is important to us at this moment and what can we do to enjoy that? Because there's only so much time that we're going to be together as a family before Ezekiel graduates. What does that look like? What does that look like after he graduates? Like, who are we as a couple? Who are we as a husband and wife? And who are we as individuals in ways that we can impact those that are around us? Because in any given moment, something could happen. And what do we do? And who are we then?
hmm
And so I think those are very important situations to work through. And we were given that space, I would say, for most of 2020. And I think a lot of us started to dial in on that and to capitalize on it and to go through that process. And then at the same time, now all of a sudden, there's just so much noise going on if you really had the opportunity to go back and look at who you are as a person, as an identity, as a rare leader, I think then this everything that's going on is just that. It's just noise. Like
Right.
it doesn't affect my life in so much of a way that I'm stressed out and I'm pulling my hair out and like with everything, and that we're fighting and we're arguing with one another, that there's so much like tension in our house or because of the news or jobs or whatever, like everything going on. Like we're comfortable as people and confident in who we are as we're leaders, that that doesn't matter. And now we can show up for others to help them find that within themselves, I think is kind of something that I revelationized or whatever the word is. Um,
Well, I think, when you're forming your identity, I think you spoke to one of the three things in order to do that, and that's understanding and discovering and developing your own personal potential without the noise attached to it. Like, we're all born with a gift. Like we are given a gift, and it's our responsibility to develop that seed, to develop that gift and share it with others. So us to really sit down and say, okay, what are some things that I can do to make a difference? Because I feel like our hearts get full when we start giving. And there's a phrase that said life begins when you start giving, right? You give to life and life starts giving to you. I think this, and that's what gets me to the second step, and that's what happened really like last year, is really choosing your purpose in life. And it just doesn't happen magically. I think you got to go out and do a whole bunch of things, and all of a sudden you find that one thing that makes your heart sing. Like, man, it just brings me so much joy and fulfillment to do this. Um, but I think that's what helps a lot of people out. I mean, if you choose a purpose and it's not compatible with who your true self is, I think that's a recipe for failure.
yeah, I think too, it comes into then you start comparing yourself and that like, what's this person doing and what's that person doing, or I should be doing this or I should be doing that, because those look glamorous
Right.
to you, but at the same time, like we are each individually and uniquely created. And I think we all have wonderful special gifts that need to be shared with one another, and not to hold those back because we don't feel like they're as glamorous as the person next to us or someone else that we've been following or we would like to do or whatever. I think it's important to embrace what you've been given because you are a unique individual.
Well, I think we know it. I think like after a while, you know what gifts you've been given. And they don't have to be like you can dunk, on a 10-foot tall basket, run a 4 minute mile. I think there's a specific gift that sings to us that we hear that continually shows up. And I think sometimes we're just so afraid to embrace it. At least I can say that.
Mm.
And when we embrace that, I think we can say, you know what? I know who I am. And, and there's a phrase that I shared just the other day. Confidence isn't people liking you. Confidence is remaining confident even when people don't like you. And that's when you have that, you have a firm grasp on your identity. And knowing that your identity is never final and it continues to develop through your lifespan. Like people will go to you, oh my gosh, how you're amazing. Oh my, I couldn't think about, being like you're like, hold on a second here. This started 25 years ago. I am not the person today that I was even last year. And I think we all got to make a conscious decision to realize, like, who are we are. Like, I'm sometimes goofy. I'm okay with that. Right. I sometimes exude a lot of energy. I'm okay with that. And I think what you said is that, you got to stop comparing yourself to other people. Comparison is the thief of joy. For goodness sakes, not everyone likes Rice Krispies, and how can you not? Right? We're not for everyone, and that's okay. And that's what we get to celebrate each other's differences, and that's what one of the Rare Leader principles is. Leave the title at the door, because I think when we get so caught up in looking at titles, we start to prejudge a lot of different things. So what else would you like, as we start to get closed up here, what else would you speak to in terms of understanding who you are and why you do what you do?
I think it's important. Like we talk about setting goals a lot, and I know your goals are different than my goals, but I think we all are given different dreams and goals to have to continue to develop us and to help us grow outside that comfort zone. And when we're on that path to being better is when, if I'm working towards that and I'm making myself better, my best version, I'm more better able to help others then. Where if I'm so focused on what you're doing and your goals and, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that, or oh my gosh, like that sounds so cool, when I'm focusing on other things like that, like I can be excited for you and encourage you on that, but I also have to remember what fuels me and what helps make me better so that I can continue to give that encouragement.
That's so true. But isn't that challenging sometimes?
No.
No.
I think that when it is challenging, that's our opportunity to learn from. Like, I think every single challenge that we're faced with is an opportunity to learn from and grow. And what is that within ourselves that we're challenged with is probably that little area which we need just that little extra attention in right now.
Well, that does it. That does it. So for those of you guys that are watching, feel free to comment in the chat box any of your thoughts when it comes to identity. Were there some questions in our conversation today that, really made you think? And so what did it make you think about? Go ahead and leave the title at the door and feel free to share it in the comments. We're here every Tuesday at 12:01 to 12:31 at the latest, and sharing different insights when it comes to being a Rare Leader. And again, the Rare Leader stands for someone who's resourceful, adaptable, resilient, and willing to engage with others. Our mission is to help people connect better with one another, to collaborate and contribute, because we believe that there's a lot of opportunity for that in today's world. Anything else you'd like to add, Danielle?
No, I don't think so.
All right, folks. So as I do with each end of everything, every conversation that we have, and here's a quote regarding identity. Identity cannot be found or fabricated, but emerges from within when one has the courage to let go. Until next time, I'm Tony Jalen with Danielle Jalen. Rise up, everyone. Talk to you soon.